ace deuce, 11 blinds on the button. So I think usually you want to be fairly tight in PSKOs here, but in this spot you are by far the shortest side, and your bounty isn't that significant. So I think you just go pretty wide here, and I would jam any ace, pretty much.
Yeah, I would also be fairly content with jamming an ace here.
He jumps, sadly goes up against ace queen. Ace queen here, yeah, I guess you kind of have to click it because he didn't put enough money in.
Yeah, I think you click here. Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, but if he had jammed like all the 11 blinds, I would just call them.
Yeah, probably. Although like ace queen is really it depends a little bit on whether you think like big blinds will play any calls. But I think like hand type wise, because I assume you're gonna go broke against the big blind anyway. I think if you want to have some gems, then this type of hand makes sense. But yeah. Like obviously, like PKO compared to like versus in a non PKO, you never want to jam that hand, I think. But in a PKO, I think it makes a little more sense.
We get a walk from queen 4 off, again a bit too tight. The ace queen opens, 3-5 defense, and c-bet and take it down seems very standard. King 9 off just folds here?
Yeah, that's. I mean, I am a covering second on the pot, but still could open, I guess.
I would think, yeah, against the recreational player who's a bit too tight and covering the big blind, you get to open fairly wide here, off a hand on an 11. I would think King 9 makes it, but maybe I'm wrong. So yeah, we fold 5-9, and blind versus blind, I guess 5-3 walks. Okay, that is a bit too tight for sure.
Yeah, when you cover by this much, you just have to flip up that, I think, and mostly just call.
Yep. Let's see here, 9-8 suited, goes for the open. Interesting. Interesting, based on player type, I would think that, yeah, anyway. So, very good flop for him. This is a flop that you want to be checking back a lot, I think, as the opener, but 9-8 can just go for a bet pretty often.
Yeah, I think that's certainly true. But your trips doesn't check back that often. I think like very low. Yeah, so.
6-7 goes for check raise. Yep, I think seems very, very reasonable. You want to be check raising this flop very aggressively.
Yeah, especially like you can usually assume that recreationals maybe oversee bet this kind of texture a little bit. So I think it's very, very effective to check raise a lot.
Yep, and that's a very unfortunate 10 card for our friend.
Yeah, this is just not a very good situation for him. I mean,
yeah, just a very sad cooler. Yep. Big blind bets again, of course. 9-8 calls, river king, jam and call. Just super standard.
Yeah, I don't think you really are supposed to get away from an 8 here.
No, for sure not. And just a very unfortunate 10 card, especially because the top straight has him drawing dead.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Okay, next hand, queen's opening, and ace-5 suited goes for a call. I think either call or 3, but I think both are fine options here.
Yeah.
Just spot you want to be mixing a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
And on the flop, we know Lex loves his c-bets.
He does, yeah. Yeah, I think it's also like, like obviously this kind of texture, and given what the ranges are, you want to check a lot with your range, but I do think as a covering stack, you get to see a lot more because your position is not going to put in as much money as you would without ICM. So I think it makes some sense to see what his hand, and he goes for second barrel.
Yeah, I think the second barrel sizing is a bit too large. I think you just want to size small mostly on the king. Because your idea is to make like pocket pairs indifferent basically and some ace highs.
Yeah, and I mean, you could also have a bigger size, but certainly queen's not really the type of hand that falls into that category, I think.
Yeah. And on the river, queen's check. And what do you think about ace-5 bluffing here? Because my thinking is that you don't really have many worse hands. Like maybe you have some queen 10 backdoor flush draw.
Yeah, well, you have you have all the queen ten. Yeah, I mean all the queen ten that have a backdoor flush on the flop certainly you have. I think you also
Yeah, but
have
those are
some.
just two combos, right?
Yeah, but I think you definitely also get through it with like ace ten, ace queen type of stuff. So I think you don't bluff this, but yeah, yeah, I think I would always check this, but depends a little bit, I guess, on how you play flop and turn with the rest of your range.
Yep. Yeah. Seems
I also wouldn't be too confident that people end up check folding king X there, but could be wrong about that.
yep, that is true. So small blind will limp ace four suited. I think this looks like a spot we wanna be limping almost everything.
Yeah.
And here you go for a limp raise. I think this is
Did I?
I think so, yeah, if I remember correctly.
Interesting, yeah.
I think this isn't like a mistake or anything, but I would rather play this a bit closer to a chippy V kind of range, I think. So not really go for ace four suited, but go for more like better, stronger suited hands.
Yeah, so like more linear, I guess.
Yeah, not so much of a polar range.
Yeah,
I
I
do
mean,
have.
I guess I was kind of winging it here in game. Let's see. I'm curious
So
about the.
we mostly get to limp range. I think we can simplify that, just not really raise much.
Yeah,
Big blind supposed to ISO like this, so arrangement looks very similar to normal GPV non-ICM stuff.
sure, yeah.
And against that, we play like this. So yeah, it's okay, but we want to stick more towards like some king queen suited, some jack nine suited, jack 10 suited kind of hands.
Yeah,
Even
that
like
makes
six
sense.
five
Yeah,
suited.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. So I think these ranges look very, very close to normal GPV non-ICM ranges. And that's because even though the risk premium is somewhat high, it's not very high. It's like 7% for you and 3.6% for him.
Yeah.
So given that we are so deep, risk premium doesn't really affect pre-flop decisions as much.
Yeah, makes sense.
King 8 just folds, of course.
Got him.
Got him, yeah.
I remember that forehand that didn't really go my way though. See what happens.
No. Ace 9, yeah, seems like a hand that we want to be calling a lot. I don't think we want to be 3-betting the offsuit hand that much when we are so deep.
Yeah, this doesn't really seem like a very attractive 3-bet candidate, and I think it's too strong to fold.
He checks on the flop. Yep, I think this is a pretty good hand to start betting with.
Yeah, in these spots, you just always kind of make something, and I think ace nine certainly bets some plans.
Now, on the turn, I think I would just check back a lot, bet with a spade.
Yeah, that's I guess what I was going for as well. I hope. Yeah.
Yep. And river, I think just checking this one back. Yeah, we'll have so many worse hands to bluff with.
Yeah. Obviously, you don't win very often there, but yeah, you cannot bluff everything.
Okay, jack 10 suited. We have an open.
Check them off.
Jack 10 off. Yeah, I don't know why I just suited.
I'm guessing he just folds.
Yeah, seems fine from both like hand selection. Sure.
Yeah, certainly.
Jack 10 limping. Yep. Queen 10 checking back. Seems pretty standard.
Oh, I remember this hand.
Yeah. This.
Oh, this is yeah. Yeah.
So on the flop, of course, we call. No real decision to be made.
Don't really know what to say about this hand. This is gonna.
Which seems a bit wide already. Like I can see it. I don't think it's like a blunder, but I think it looks a bit wide.
Yeah. So also, I think the way these boards are supposed to be played, like he clearly plays a completely different strategy. But I think already on yeah, king 10 8 is, for example, a lot different than like king 10 deuce or something. So I wouldn't like anywhere close to step my range on a flop if I were him. But this hand, reasonable enough. You can bet and then do like go into check call modus or something after. But then turn is where I think you just want to bet polar. It really just doesn't make sense to me at least to bet 10x a lot here, and especially like such a relatively weak one. And then he just ends up going for three straights for value, I guess.
Yeah, he bets on the river again, which is definitely too thin here. You still have every single king X imaginable.
Yeah, it's just yeah. It's mind blowing to me when I saw. I ended up falling, and it is so mind blowing to me when I saw this replay. Like I couldn't believe it, but Yeah, I obviously made a terrible fold versus actual strategy.
And it's a huge sizing too for a 10. Like if he goes for like, I don't know, 25% or something, I don't think it's good, but I can sort of see it, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's just important to put roughly the amount of money into the pot that that your hand wants to put in, like as a general, like how you want to build your strategies. And this just went completely wrong for him, I think here. And yeah, but it was a effective bluff. I think. It's also like the one hand that I would the one better hand that I fold, I guess, because I mean ace ten I probably just shrug call down if I don't raise pre. I guess I'd never have it because I would always raise pre, but yeah, like
You see, it's a merge. You fold queen 10, but you call like 10 3, 10 deuce off, 10 deuce suited or something.
yeah, 10 deuce would certainly be
Yeah,
way more
so
attractive. Like the
it's
thing
a
is,
genius play.
with queen 10, you just don't really expect to ever beat value. So even though the queen is, I guess, not supposed to bluff that often for him, it can still see it happening from time to time. So it doesn't really become a super attractive card to be calling with. Yeah, yeah. It was I was quite stunned when I saw the replayer, but it worked out for him.
So at this point, we're just going to go to some interesting hands because all the stacks in here are super deep, like 100 big blinds plus. So we just won't go through every hand and we'll just look at the more interesting ones.
Yeah.
The first hand that I have is over here after this one, where just to quickly check the stack sizes, not many things have changed. We have like 118, he has 130, 33, and the big blinds covering everyone. So we open aces from the cutoff. And the small blind goes for a 3-bet with king 10 offsuit. Now, I don't necessarily like this. I don't think you should be using such weak hands when you're still covered and your bounty is kind of significant. He has like 4 starting bounties. We said starting stack is 250. So at this point, this is worth like 110k for one. So like 11 blinds, right? For his bounties.
Yeah.
Which is a lot compared to his stack. So he just can't be free betting hands as weak as this. Do you agree with my thoughts?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I think it's just too wide, but he's a very aggressive player. So I'm not surprised by it, but
yeah. And just to show that
it certainly.
Sorry, Bill.
Yeah, it just seems too wide.
Yeah, there is very little free betting to begin with, and it's mostly gonna be value hands. For bluffs, it's like some ace 10 off, some like ace 8 suited kind of hands, but yeah, like king jack off is basically folding already. So free betting king
do I fold anything here like because its bounty is worth so much?
Almost nothing. Like just some really bad offsuit hands.
Yeah.
Like we're calling, queen 6 suited and 6-4 suited against the free bet.
Yeah. How much is the risk premium? Like negative?
Let's see.
Like
so
10?
cutoff against negative 7.5.
Right.
So just we're not really folding. So he wants to free bet just a very strong kind of range. Even the bluffs you can see are strong suited hands because we want to be doing well post flop.
Yeah.
Just to quickly check. So after he 3-bets and you jump, first off, you're not supposed to jump much at all.
No.
Because you want to protect your wide calling range, and also his 3-bet range should be fairly strong to begin with. Yeah. But after you jump, he just ends up calling, folding ace jack of king queen suited. I think in reality, you probably get to 3-bet call these hands.
Yeah.
But king 10 off just doesn't get to make it. And post flop was interesting here too. King high flop, and he c-bets and we call. Yeah, seems pretty standard. Now, on the turn, on the ace, he goes for another small bet. And to me, this doesn't look like a card he wants to be range betting.
Yeah, I agree. I do, like, I can kind of see what it's trying to do here, but yeah, I don't know. Like, it can never be too bad, I think, to play a strategy like this with this hand, but it seems like a card where this hand probably wants to check a lot, and then you want to have some bluffs and some stronger hands that go for this kind of sizing. It will be effective against my underpairs though. Like, yeah, certainly those are in a very bad spot on the turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think he has a bunch of hands that benefit from checking, like queens, jacks, these kind of king X hands.
Yeah, it seems like also like I think if you have King Queen, it's already like different. Not that he's necessarily ever has that hand pre, but like
Mm-hmm.
that's a hand that gets called by a lot of the worst King X. But then King 10 seems so weak in terms of King X that like you still get called by King Jack and King Queen that are pure in my range. And then uh yeah, there's obviously I also have a bunch of worst King X, but I think it's just yeah, King 10 is just low enough of a King X that you just want to be checking a lot on turn.
Our line seems pretty standard. We call flop, call turn, and then jam river, and he finds the fold. Yep, I think
Yeah,
good fold. Tough for us to have many bluff there. Next
sure,
hand
yeah.
is over here. The stacks haven't really changed too much, just that Nacho has dropped down a lot. Ace deuce opens button, seems standard, although I think at these stack size I would just go for a bigger sizing than a min raise. I mean, it's obviously
Yeah,
nitpicking,
yeah, I
but
agree.
and king 3 suited defense. I thought flop here is pretty interesting. King 3 goes for a call on the flop. I think I would just rather raise this hand. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, I think both are fine. Certainly if you have like Jack 3 of hearts, Queen 3 of hearts, I think I would be raising a lot. But yeah, I agree. King 3 also makes a lot of sense for raising. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Then on the turn against the overbet, I guess you end up calling with this hand.
Yeah, certainly. Like, I mean, you still beat some bluffs, and I think yeah, I mean, you just obviously have a lot of equity, and yeah, it sucks. It sucks if you lose to a bluff like this, but it doesn't happen too often, I guess. And yeah, your draw's not enough where you just call, I think.
Yep, I agree. And ace deuce goes for a river, but I think ace deuce line is pretty cool here as well.
Yeah, I think if you get this river, you missizing is interesting though, because like if you think about what he should be value betting here on the river, it's like flushes plus, I think. Because obviously a 10 would be good as well, but the thing is like he's not really over betting turn, I think a lot with 10x. So he's already pretty polar on turn, and then I think if you bet value bet flushes plus, you just go bigger than this. But yeah. It
Yeah, I don't
seems
think
doesn't
necessarily want to jam though. I think like maybe
no
1.5
no, but
export,
I'm
something
saying
like
like
that. Yeah.
1.5, 1.
Yeah.
Between 1.5 and 2 export, I would assume is better.
Yeah.
And wow, a quick call. Huh. I mean, this just seems like a race, right? Or
I think it's a bit too thin to raise against the overbet. Because obviously you can be up against some houses and also the ace high flush draw.
uh, yeah, okay, okay, yeah.
And there
I
is the
don't know.
14 big blind stack as well.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying you should jam. Like, I would think you got to put more money in here. Like, I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into the imposition sizing on the river. But I would discount boats and not flushes a little bit when I see the sizing, and then there's still a bunch of lower flushes. So and also like nut flushes, I'm not really sure if they end up betting two streets too often. Because most of them are gonna have showdown value as well. So I don't know. I think I would raise there, but might be too soon.
Next hand, we have this one. So what happened is that Nacho has gained some chips and we've lost a bunch. So now Lex and Coco Jumbo are the two big stacks. And
Yeah,
as and Nacho are the shorter stacks, but still fairly deep.
yeah,
So here Coco Jumbo goes for a limp. And already ace-8 off, I think I would just mostly rather raise here.
yeah. Given the stacks, you want to play relatively raise heavy, I think, compared to chip V. So yeah, I think it was also raise in his spot. King
So
Jack,
um,
yes, fine.
you go for a nice... Yeah, so I think in theory, we're not supposed to be raising King Jack because the risk of getting limp raised is a bit too high. I think like King Queen would be my cutoff point here. But if we consider that maybe he isn't limping strong enough hands and just goes for a raise more often than not, then I think it's fine. I don't think it matters much anyway. I don't think it can ever be a mistake.
Yeah, I agree.
And just to quickly have a look on the sim as well before we go post-flop. So here we are. First key strategy, yeah, ace-8 is very high frequency raise. Just he gets to raise a lot. And against the limp, Yeah, king jack mostly wants to check back, but it doesn't really matter much. We
Yeah.
play a range very close to normal GBV again here, because risk premiums are just not gonna be very high. Like it's 7.3%, so yeah, not anything dramatic. As a
Yeah.
point of comparison, if this was a non-PSKO final table, our risk premium here would be like 15 or so, right?
Yeah, I think at least, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, around 15 probably. There's not really any short stacks.
So we raise and he calls. On the flop, you go for a check back, and I think this is good. You want to explain why?
Yeah, so like on this type of board texture, I would play a pretty polar range. So like a polar betting strategy on flop. And then this hand, I think could, bet sometimes, but certainly also checks a lot, I think. Yeah, that's
Yep.
how I would
Yep,
play my range here.
Perfect. So on the turn, he goes for a fairly large bet, and I think this is pretty close here. I guess we'd rather call this hand than like an 8, because this hand can just improve a lot more to the nuts, I guess.
Yeah, it's not exciting. I think, I don't know. I think I would probably fold in hindsight, but like you do have some nut outs. It would be a little bit better though if there wasn't a flush draw, I think, but
Yeah.
it's not exciting. I think I would like to fold in hindsight, but yeah.
I on the river, of course, super crystal clear fold for us.
Yeah.
Okay, next hand is right around the corner. It's not this one. It is this one. Okay, so we limp, and he checks back. Seems pretty standard. On the flop, we should be close to a range check for us, right?
Yeah, I think very high frequency check, yeah.
Turn is the 9, and you go for a half pot bet. Seems fine, seems good. I think smaller also could make sense.
Yeah,
just fold out
I
the
think
nothing.
actually I would probably just min bet here. So that's like what is 50k min bet? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's obviously not a huge difference, but I think min bet is slightly better.
Mm-hmm. And then on the river, you go for, I think, yeah, a bet that is fairly large. So I was thinking here, like, what kind of hands do we want to bet? And sure, like something like 5-3, 5-6 might be better, but I think this also just gets to make it there.
Yeah, it's obviously not very good to have, especially an 8, but yeah, I thought. I mean, I think realistically speaking, you can expect slightly more folds on the river than you should be getting.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about it.
And then this happens.
No.
This is just a ridiculous play.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think this is a fine hand to bet. But I think his raise is just a bit to think here. If you want to raise something, then maybe a 4.
I mean, obviously you want to have some qualities that make raising make sense, right? Like you want to have either you want to block a boat or just not block my bluffs or this kind of thing. It's just this really doesn't make any sense in my opinion. But and his raise sizing is also very small. I guess he's just wrapping like king high flush or something better, or king high ace high flush, something like this. But
yeah,
I don't know.
One problem here is that it's really hard for him to have bluffs, because when he calls the like big sizing on the turn, he either has a spade or he has a pair. Maybe some kind of straight roll like this or Jack 10. So that's why I think he chose a hand like this, because he's like, I would call a 4. So now that he has to choose unpaired hands, so he just chose this one. But yeah, I do think it's a bit too wide, and I would just first of all I would just have bigger sizings, and then I would choose better hands like a 4.
Yeah, you just in general when you bluff, it's pretty important to block the hands that are going to call you, and in this case, it's just not the case at all. So yeah, it's just not doesn't seem very good.
The right next hand is also interesting. We have pocket fives opening, sure, and ace jack suited calling. I think ace jack suited could also just go for a value 3-bet here when they are so deep.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
On the flop, pocket fives go for a c-bet. I think, sure, why not?
Yeah, seems reasonable.
And ace jack goes for a check raise. Again, seems very standard. But now pocket fives end up calling. And I think this just looks too wide, right?
Yeah, this doesn't seem that great.
Yeah, I think you just have to have just more equity, basically, than fives.
He checks here.
He ends up betting. I think if you call the flop somehow, you just have to bluff, I guess.
No, I'm saying like, why does Ace Jack check the
Oh,
turn?
why does check the turn? Yeah, I don't know. I guess he just thinks he is blocking all the continuing range and wants to allow like the high cards to bluff.
Okay, interesting. Yeah,
I would just go for more bets, but
yeah, it just doesn't really seem like a hand that you want to be checking. But and then I mean, certainly you check raise again, right? I mean,
and
I
gets
have no
the
idea what's
max
going on in this
punishment.
hand. Oh, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. This is
Yeah. Now,
I
what
don't
sizing does
understand
he
this
go on the
hand at
river?
all.
Let's see.
What sizing does he go for here?
Yeah, overbet. We
Overbet.
just have to call ace jack, obviously, and that must be one really annoying hand to see. Like, really
Yeah, but you
annoying.
also kind of can blame yourself there for taking like a complete nonsense line. Or I mean, yeah, it doesn't. To me, it doesn't make much sense. But yeah.
Yep. Next hand we have is this one, where you fold, and then queens go for a raise, and pocket sevens go for a jam. Now, I think
Yeah,
what happens here is that in a non-scale tournament, you mostly want to call these kind of hands and just jam fairly linear as the big blind, or a fairly polar element as the big blind. But in the PSKO, you want to go for a bit more of a linear range, especially when your bounty is still significant. We said the bounty is worth like 400k or so about 8 big blinds. So you just want to jam a bit of a stronger range.
yeah.
So pocket sevens, yeah, looks like a hand that wants to be jamming. And queens, of course, call. And there's a 7. Let's check the scene for this as well.
7 is always coming.
Always. So interestingly, already the small blind wants to have some jams with some offsuit ace-x and some middling suited hands. It's not much, but it's there. And the big blind is calling really, really wide here. For 30 blind, just calling king 9 suited, ace 7 off, pocket fours. Yeah, and again, the risk premium is just 5.5%. It's not much. And then also, HRC doesn't calculate the future EV, which is also something to keep in mind. If we double up here, we get more chance to start covering people. And he already would be covering you. Now, against the raise, big blind gets to play like this. So a fairly linear kind of range. Yeah, we jump some offsuit ace-x as well, but not jamming like all of them. King queen off jamming. So yeah, close to what we would expect. And against the jam, the small blind is also calling like ridiculously wide.
Wow.
Just raise calling 9-8 suited, 10-8 suited, and these kind of hands.
Yeah, it makes. At first I thought like 7 is not really the type of hand you want to be doing, but then I mean, if 3s are raise calling, it makes sense. I would argue though that most people in the small blind would just probably jam 3s through 5s first in. So I think in reality, if those pairs are removed from this node, then 7s end up calling way more. Even though like obviously you get to fold at some equity and you still get called by some ridiculous hands. It's mostly hands that flip against your hand anyway. So
yeah,
I think calling is slightly better in reality.
I agree, but my counter argument would be that I also think people won't be raise calling as wide. Like I don't think the small blind will be raise calling 9-8 suited, for example, or 10-8
yeah,
suited.
that's
so you end up folding a lot of hands that have like 50% equity against you. And also, we might not see limps. We might just see a pure raising strategy from the small blind.
Yeah.
So I think
true.
It's not super amazing to jump 7s compared to calling, but I think it's going to be the better option.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, next one we have is not this one. 138 and 20. Here we go. Okay. So the stack sizes haven't changed much. Nacho has doubled up as we saw from pocket queens. So now we are the shortest stack. Well done, Jans. And Coco Jumbo is by far the biggest stack. So it falls to us on the button with a6 offsuit. And you go for an open here. I think this is a bit too wide in theory when we consider how big your bounty is.
Yeah.
You have a bit over 5 starting bounties, which is like 11 big blinds.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be pretty tight here.
Yeah.
However,
I agree.
The small blind ends up calling with ace jack, which looks like a pretty clear 3-bet call. So if they don't 3-bet enough and they go post-flop too much, then I can definitely see merit for us expanding our opening range.
Pretty wild that they just called ace jack there.
Yeah, and if we look at this, so from the bottom, our range looks like this. So a7 off, ace5 off are the break-even hands. But against the open, the small blind gets to 3-bet very, very aggressively and just stack off with so many hands.
What is the bottom that he calls off? Ace 10 off, I guess?
Yeah, so after we jam like this, so seems reasonable. He gets to call, ace 10 off is the break-even, but all these suited hands end up calling.
Yeah.
So the small blind
Makes
definitely
sense.
gets to stack off super wide. He called ace-jack off, so I think we can definitely assume he calls these suited hands as well, right? Because they're much more natural calls.
For sure.
So then expanding our opening range makes a lot of sense, because we go post-flop against jack-9 suited instead of it blowing us off the hand.
Yeah.
And also, after he calls, the big blind gets to play like this, so a bunch of jams, a bunch of squeezes. I think, again, a lot of these hands will end up overcalling and not jamming or free-betting.
Yeah, I think so too.
So yeah, I think it's perfectly fine with these assumptions. This was interesting about pre-flop. Post-flop, there isn't much happening. This looks like a pretty clear check back for us. We don't really want to be betting too much here. And a hand like this looks like the ideal check back.
Yeah.
Turn,
Just
checks two again. And okay, the river actually is pretty funny. So ace-jack goes for a value bet. Yeah, seems pretty standard at this point. Small sizing. And king 8 decides to call.
What?
I think I remember that. Am I wrong? I don't think I'm wrong. I think I remember him calling. Hold on. Let's see. I don't think I'm wrong, because it surprised me. Let's see. Yeah, so king 8 decides to call, which to me seems crazy. The big blind here will have so many random, like 4x, deuce x, 3x, ace x, 9x.
Yeah, this I don't. He didn't. Surely he didn't mischeck or anything.
No, because he tanked for a long time before calling.
Yeah, I don't really understand it.
Yeah, and then you end up, I think, overcalling here, if I remember correctly. Yeah. I think I would just rather fold against two ranges. Definitely call against one guy. But readless, I would call.
The thing is, if big blind really tanks, then you just discount ace-x, right? Like he just always has like a worse bluff catcher. So like then it's kind of like calling only against small blind. Or do you think like he potentially like is thinking about raising with certain thin hand or something?
Yeah, I would think there's also what you said about him thinking about raising, and he tanked, but he didn't like go deeply to tie bang or something. He just called as soon as tie bang came up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So maybe you can think it's a bit weaker.
I think maybe I'm just trying to think of the reasons why I called in game, but it could be that I read a little bit into the timing. But
I mean, if he's calling king 8, don't get me wrong. If he's calling king 8, we should always call like everything here. But I think I wouldn't assume that he has that.
Yeah. Weird one. But yeah, I should just prevent all of this by folding pre-flop, I guess.
Mm-hmm. We have like 4 more hands, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Yeah, not this one. We have this one. And these are fairly quick as well, because it's just mostly pre-flop stuff. Button opens, and you end up jamming ace 7 off here. And I thought this was pretty interesting. Thing is, his range will be very, very wide, and our bound is significant, so we don't have that much fold equity. I thought it's very close, like ace 8. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. Go on.
Yeah, no, it's these spots are a little bit weird, and these are the kind of spots you just don't end up not studying very often, I guess. I would never jam this on a normal final table, but I thought in PKO, I just get called by worse a lot, and you just kind of shrug jam, I guess. But...
Yeah, it's basically break even. It doesn't really matter much, but it's definitely like the bottom. Ace 8 seems like a pretty clear happy jam. Also worth pointing out that we want to jam super linear. We don't jam like king 10 suited. We don't jam jack 10 suited. We just call this hand, and the EV difference is quite significant.
Yeah, the amount of calls is actually somewhat surprising to me.
Mm-hmm. I think it's because you want to call these kind of strong suited hands. You can afford to call wider as well.
Yeah.
Now, after you end up jamming, what is he supposed to call? Something like this. Yeah, I guess maybe he calls slightly wider.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm honestly not sure.
Because he has this like super huge 150 blind stack, and you have only 22 with like the second biggest bounty. So I don't know. I think maybe he calls like king 10 off or like a7 off, something like that. But yeah,
Yeah,
whatever.
it's possible. It's kind of depend a little bit on how people evaluate the bounties exactly, and
Yeah, for
but I
sure.
guess I wouldn't be surprised if he calls wider.
Interesting that the big blind is actually supposed to call pocket threes.
Yeah.
The big blind gets to
Also another.
go very wide here because the button will just fold super often. The button is supposed to open 76% of hands. So the big blind
Yeah.
can actually end up calling a fairly wide range, like ace 9 off, ace 8 suited, pocket threes plus. And yeah, the button just has to fold a lot of hands here.
This is wild though to call.
Yeah,
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 it
yeah.
makes sense. Bounty's worth a lot.
So they both folded. So tight.
Got it through, yeah.
This is the next hand that I think is very interesting. We don't have a solve for this, but it's a fairly complicated hand. You open ace jack, yep, seems very standard. Knight 8 suited, defense seems very standard. On the flop, actually, you can explain your thoughts here instead of me going over it.
Yeah, so I mean, certainly at this SPR, it's just a texture that you have a lot of checks on, and then I think with the ace of spades specifically, because it's just the kind of hand that has the amount of equity that you don't really want to get blown off of, and then obviously also you block a lot of his worst continues. So I think ace jack with ace spades makes a lot of sense as check.
Yep, I agree. On the turn, he goes for a very small sizing and just seems like a pretty clear continue.
Yeah, this seems this sizing really does seem a little bit weird to me. I assumed, I guess in game that it would be like a deuce a lot because it just seems like I mean a 7 and a 6 obviously are both worth a lot bigger sizing. I just don't really think blocking here should be a big part of your strategy, and I think I would probably wouldn't have any blocks at all here. Just check a lot with a deuce, but and then also like in terms of the hand that he has, I think if you want to divide your bluffs between different sizes, then certainly this seems like a very natural hand to put in your bigger size because of the amount of equity that you have. But
Yeah, this hand can probably even like bet call if you jam, like bet big, and if you jam, fine, whatever, let's roll it.
yeah, for sure. I mean, with the bounty, yeah, for sure. And it's not like I'm gonna have a lot of jams or first polar betting strategies. So
River jack, and he goes for a small sizing. Um, what do you think? Again, I think I would just size up on the river.
yeah, I don't know. I think actually it makes sense for. I think if you bet small on the flop, maybe it makes sense. Although I'm not really sure what kind of strategy he plays on the turn. Like, is he really value betting a deuce on the turn and then value betting it again on the river?
Yeah, no,
I have
right?
no idea. Honestly, I'm kind of lost. I feel like he's just kind of randomly selecting combos and sizes whenever he feels like it. But I guess if you block turn, it makes some sense to block river on a card like this. But then again, it also doesn't really make sense that he has a lot of hands that can still value it, or he would have to have like a 7 that's small on the turn, which also seems a little bit counterintuitive. But yeah, anyway, I think I have a very clear race with my hand.
So
Not much to
my only
talk about.
concern here would be like obviously your hand is super strong and it's two small sizings. Is that I can't really define a range for him that's gonna bet call river much. As you said, I think the 7 will almost always bet larger on the turn. It's a 7, it's the nuts. A deuce, even if it somehow bets turn and river, I don't think he's gonna call much against the race and might end up turning it into a bluff. So the problem I'm
Yeah,
having, so that's the problem I'm having, that I just don't see that many hands that's just gonna bet small, and call on the river race.
yeah. My counter argument would be like I also kind of assume that he doesn't really have better hands too often in this line, but actually that was wrong with yeah. I don't know. It's a very confusing spot. I think I'm fine with the raise for value. Yeah, but I do see your point though. But yeah, I think it's kind of a spot where your hand is so strong you just raise and let him decide what he gets to call with. There should be some hands that can call. Yeah, now you're obviously just hating life.
Yeah, now you really hate life. But again, I think you folded here, and I really like your fold. It's just so hard for him to have enough bluffs that go like small, small, and then jam.
Yeah.
Yeah, just really can't find penny hands. And even if it is a bluff once in a while, fine. We're not even that high up on our range here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, certainly. And yeah, I think it really sucks because you get such a good price. But I think also when in these kind of lines, when it's like kind of a creative sort of line, I think people end up being a little bit more value heavy maybe, but yeah, not entirely sure. I think it's fine to fold.
Yeah, I
I'm
agree.
out.
I agree for sure. Okay, so then we have this hand over here, which I thought was pretty interesting regarding the pre-flop actions. So sadly, we busted. Actually, I think your busting hand wasn't that interesting. I didn't even.
Yeah, whatever. We don't have to look at it. I don't remember, but I guess I was short, so
Yeah, it wasn't that interesting. So yeah, it's two big stacks, like 170 for Coco Jumbo, 100 for Lex, and 19 for Nacho.
uh-huh.
And Nacho goes for a jam with pocket sevens. I think fine. The bounty is still worth quite a bit. We said it's around 400k, so like 7-ish blinds, like 6.5. So we definitely want to have some jumps. Ace-8 suited goes for a call. I think this looks a bit close, but probably fine.
Yeah, I think I would have called as well.
Yeah, and then Ace-King suited goes for a jam. Worth pointing out here that we don't really want to have normal in raises from either of the two positions, because the bounty is just worth a little bit too much. Like Coco Jumbo cannot like raise and then fold against the jam, because the odds you will be getting will be just too good.
Yeah, for sure.
And I also have this over here, where the button, doing a bunch of jamming, pocket pairs, offsuit ace-6, strong suited stuff.
Yeah.
But other than that, just raising very tight. Because it works both ways. We said he wants to jam because of the bounty being worth a lot, but that's also why he wants to play a very tight opening range.
Yeah.
Against that, ace-8 suited is calling, actually getting to call a lot, even like ace-5 suited. Ends up calling. And has a bunch of jumps as well for 100 big blinds. Pocket pairs.
Yeah, four sides and hands, I guess.
Yeah. Against the jam, Lex has to be fairly wide as well, and I think we can assume that probably he won't be calling that wide for 100. Like 6s, 7s, 100.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I agree. I think he's more like, maybe more like ace plus ace queen or something like that.
Yeah. And against the small blind call, a big blind just gets to have a bunch of jumps, pocket pairs. Yeah, seems.
There's some funny overcalls now, like 6-5 and
6-5. Yeah. I spoke about this in the multi-way all-in chapter, where against a bunch of ranges, we basically want to lean more towards suited connected hands and stray away from high cards which are dominated.
Yeah.
And we can see this applies even in ICM spots, like folding, king 10 suited, folding ace 10 off, ace 8 suited, but calling 6-5 suited.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have the semi last hand, which is over here. Right, so now the stacks have changed a bit. Now Lex is the short stack because he lost against pocket sevens. So he has 31 big blinds, Nacho has 40, and Coco Jumbo has the massive chip lead. So Lex decides to open pocket threes on the button here. What do you think about that?
It seems like a very straightforward fold, open fold to me.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think it's a hand that we should be folding. And also, I think it's fair to assume that the other players will be playing fairly aggressively against us as well. So I don't think it's a spot where you can say, okay, we will get overfolds or anything like that. Small blind goes for a 3-bet with Jack 10, which also seems very wide. We should be up against a presumably tight range, so I don't think Jack 10 gets to make it.
Yeah, Nacho lost 3-bets, and then, wow, 3 is...
Yeah, and then on top of that, pocket threes go for a jam. So I think all of the actions here seem suboptimal.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. So,
well, threes might be good against his actual range, I guess, but who knows?
Yeah, so threes are break even. Deuces we fold. Threes kind of break even.
It's still, I would have thought it's a pure fold, but interesting, yeah.
And the small blind is supposed to go very tight. Like we can see, Jack 10 off is so far off.
Yeah.
You don't even 3-bet ace 9 off here, basically, because pattern is only opening 27%. And against this kind of 3-bet, pocket threes are losing a lot. And I think it's hard to make it a profitable jam when it's losing like 1.5k.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, like you have to add a lot of 3-bet folds, I think, to make that profitable. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think we might see more 3-bet calls as well, like ace jack suited, ace 10 suited, sevens.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like the thing is, when the 3-better gets induced pretty wide, usually you just don't end up making these kind of polar-ish jams. You just jam like pretty linear. And I think it's certainly the case. And I would 100% think that he 3-bet calls ace jack suited here.
Yeah, me too. The next hand is right after, and it's very similar actually. So Lex is on the button again, similar stack sizes, and pocket threes again.
Okay, well, it makes sense.
He's consistent. And the small blind goes for a 3-bet with pocket eights, so definitely inducing that. We saw it was mixing on the solver before. And Lex is, again, consistent, goes for a jam, and this time it gets punished.
Yeah, that's actually kind of hilarious that exactly the same thing unfolded and it backfired instead.
Yeah. And I also run this one. So again, we can see threes. Now Lex has like one big blind more, so threes like slightly more incentivized to open. Small blind, yeah, eights are supposed to be mixing. And yeah, of course, very similar strategy, but we can see that if eights are going full frequency and some ace jack, ace 10 suited, then threes will be losing even more. And we can't even jam like fives. We're jamming like eights plus, so very linear kind of range.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, like Lex loses here, and then it goes to heads up, and we won't be reviewing that as boundaries don't really affect heads up.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. I will show the few sims remaining after that. Thank you very much, Jans, for joining me.
Yeah,
it was a pleasure.
Problem. I'm happy to do it, and it was fun. Yeah, good to see the sims. Thanks for running those.
Yep. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Hey, Alex here. Back to show you the two sims that we spoke about during the review. The first one is this one with King 10 offsuit opening of 15 big blinds and Ace 10 offsuit calling. So here, the hijack is supposed to actually be really, really tight. We can see that he's opening overall VPAPing about 15%, and King 10 off just doesn't make it. Neither does 10-9 suited or Ace 9 off or pocket fours. So overall, a fairly tight range. Instead of jamming, there's not too much jamming. Some middling pocket pairs, ace jack off, ace queen off, and the best suited broadways. The reason that the hijack gets to open so wide, even though he's by far the shortest stack, is that his bounty is still worth quite a bit compared to his stack size. So we said he has 1.5 starting, which at this point is about maybe 120k, so around 4 blinds. So he has 15, and his bounty is worth 4. So he just has to play a very, very tight kind of range. Now, even against this type of a range, the cutoff gets to call very wide. We can see suited connectors, suited aces, pocket pairs, and also ace 10 off, king jack off, even queen jack off. So overall, a fairly wide calling range for a very tight range. Then the other one that we had was the king queen suited hand, which was, let me find the timing, so 33-40 over here, where we opened and big blind 3-bet and we 4-bet and big blind called and check folded on the flop. So we weren't sure about either pre-flop or post-flop here. First, we are supposed to open around 27%. The big blind gets to play like this, so not much 3-betting and not really interested in 3-betting king-queen suited. We do 3-bet some suited hands, but it's the weaker ones, more around the suited 9x and some 10x. Because these hands are also just folding out better ones. For example, we 3-bet jack 9 suited, and then the hijack gets to fold all of these better jack X. In terms of 4-betting, we want to use actually the larger sizing and not the small one. I allowed a 2x or 2x and then a slightly bigger one. And we can see the slightly bigger one is the one being preferred. In terms of which hands we get to 4-bet, it's aces by far, and then some ace-king suited and some low-suited ace-x, as well as some off-suited ace-x, but at fairly low frequency. Against our 4-bet, the big blind is supposed to continue like this, so very little jamming and calling most pocket pairs or suited connected hands. So for that, I also ran the post-flop scene. However, we had to add king-queen suited because obviously it wasn't included in the GTO 3-bet range. And basically what I did was simply add king-queen suited half frequency. I left everything else the same, added 50% king queen suited because I think maybe he doesn't 3-bet it at a pure frequency. Now, first interesting thing is that we actually do not get to range bet the flop. We are betting mostly half pot, and yeah, we're just not really range betting. We're not using the small sizing, and we're not range betting. Against the half pot sizing, king queen is of course just folding. Against the smaller sizing, king queen is still gonna be folding, but it's really hard to calculate when we allow for so many bigger sizes. So I think one way to approach this would be to simply remove the other sizings for in position and just only allow this small 25% c-bet sizing. So let's wait for the sim and have a look. Okay, should be accurate enough. Now we check, or big blind checks, and when we only do the small sizing, again, our c-bet frequency doesn't go into range betting. We still want to do a bunch of checking back. And here, king queen suited is still folding. It's only the flush draw that continues. There's basically no backshot flush draw hand really calling, besides maybe ace-9 suited, and even that is very, very break-even. Now, of course, if we assume that in position is just simply range betting here, then we would get to continue much wider, and king queen suited would make it into that range. All right. So yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the review. And yep, as always, any feedback welcome, and we're very thankful to Janis for joining and sharing his input.